I was just kind of a fascinating guy. Like he wasn't really like demand focused.
Yeah.
He was very much just like, I'm solving a problem.
Yeah, his business seemed to be just coming to him as well, which was great.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that, right? If you just solve a problem really well,
yeah,
like a lot of the other things kind of come together. From scrappy founders to 8-figure success stories, we're busting startup myths, getting raw insights from market-tested entrepreneurs, and revealing the proven playbook for bootstrapping your B2B startup to 5 million. This is the Startup Different podcast. Last week, we spoke to the fantastic Rob Levin, seasoned entrepreneur and investor. We deep dive on how he's an accidental entrepreneur, how he asks for and gets money, and how his business almost exploded in the blink of an eye. Welcome to Startup Different. Hello, folks, and welcome to Startup Different. It is David and Christopher. Chris.
Hey,
man, what's going on?
not too much. Excited to talk to you about Rob.
Yeah.
That was quite
that was pretty sweet, actually.
Yeah.
That guy was awesome. You know, we've had if I do say so myself, we've had some pretty awesome guests the last while.
There's like the category of guests where they tell us stuff, and then there's the category of guests where we just like let them talk.
Yeah.
Because they're super interesting, you know?
He's solidly in the let them talk category. I mean, it reminded me of like Mark Organ and that conversation we had where it was just, okay, this guy's just spewing good stuff. It's just like, let it happen.
Yeah,
you know
doesn't
what I mean?
Stephen Hawking just have like people following him around, like writing down what he says and things like that?
Really?
I don't know.
That
feel like
sounds
totally
that's made up. That can't
But they're
be
in
right.
that category.
Like, I could believe that because he's a smart guy, obviously. But come on, like that'd be really weird if you just want people following him.
I'm sure there's somebody out there. That
What if
just
somebody
gets
stole his
followed.
idea? Like, what if he just said something and it was like, does he claim ownership of that idea?
Of course not, because he was hired to follow the smart person around and write down whatever.
Oh, he
they
was
said.
hired.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought these were just randoms.
I don't know. We're way off topic now.
Are we? Yes. Welcome to Startup Different, everybody. So we had an amazing interview last week with Rob Levin. Really interesting. So his career is pretty fascinating too. It's not, it's long. It's interesting. He went from like starting a business, like kind of by accident, to then running that business, selling that business, and we'll talk about that a lot, and then moving into kind of this investment space, and then actually running a business that was about investments, which is kind of interesting, loans, which is fascinating, and having some absolutely crazy stuff happen to him there that I cannot believe that his company could survive, which we confirmed afterwards. It did survive. It wasn't exactly solvent for a while, but it did survive. And he had tons of lessons. The episode was full of, I think, really great tidbits. And one thing that was kind of interesting, and something that we often don't really talk about on this show, was some of the lessons actually around funding, because you and I are just so skeptical of funding.
Yeah, we just have no experience in the funding side of things. So,
we're skeptical though too.
Yeah.
I think especially early stage funding. But I think that for the amount of capital that he would have been raising for some of these businesses, like this guy is seasoned at actually raising capital. He understands what it takes. So really, really fascinating. So I guess let's just start off with him and his companies. So what did you think of his sort of like original, like kind of being this like accidental entrepreneur?
I can totally appreciate this, because this was me as well. Remember, I graduated from computer science during the dot-com bust.
Yeah.
There weren't many jobs, so it was like, I guess I'll start.
Well, people just wouldn't hire you. Hey, we're taking a short break to tell you some exciting news. Chris and I wrote a book. Surprise! It's called Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business, and it's available now. Like our show, we're trying to pay it forward to our fellow entrepreneurs. The book busts 33 business myths, tells some of our most hilarious stories, and gives you many of our best tools to build, scale, and exit your business. You'll find the book on all major online retailers, including Amazon. Check it out. We think it's pretty great. And now, back to the show.
Sorry. Thanks, bro. I really appreciate the support. No, but like
softball.
Honestly, it was. I kind of understand that, because I started my business because I didn't really have any great job prospects.
Yeah.
I think I did get a job offer, but it was like actually really low. The number, I feel like it was like with an insurance company as well.
Was it before the bust or after?
No, like after, during the bust, right?
During the bust.
Yeah. So
Okay.
like I'm in the accidental entrepreneur category as well, I would say.
Yeah, like he kind of referred to it as like he just like found a difficult problem, and it was actually a very interesting problem too. Wasn't it around like this company that acquired a bunch of these other companies, I can't exactly remember the industry off the top of my head. If you do, that'd be amazing. But but then they ended up, it was pharmaceuticals. And they would end up with all this other sort of like collateral from when they would acquire companies where they'd get like, okay, here's the pensions for all the employees and all this other sort of like overhead.
Right.
They weren't really sure what to do with that. And I was like, that's valuable.
Yeah.
Like my first thought was like, not only is this a good business idea, it's obviously so valuable to a hugely paying customer.
Right.
Like pharmaceutical companies are going to be doing pretty well for themselves. Yeah. So, and then he's kind of immediately overwhelmed.
Yeah. So, and I know that feeling. Like our first client as well, we take on the project and we're like, holy smokes, wow, we have to do all this, and the scope really expanded.
Yeah.
And we are being kept to that price we quoted.
Well, yeah, this was it too, right?
Yeah.
He mentioned that, and he had actually a bunch of lessons. I believe at one point he lost count because there were 3 lessons that I at least caught.
Yeah.
But the first one was accurate, which was to ask for more money than you think you need. And remember, because he went and he asked for money that he thought was like astronomical. I actually remember this feeling too.
Yeah, he thought he did ask for an astronomical amount, right?
Yeah. Which is, I think that's something that happens to a ton of first-time entrepreneurs,
right?
Because your perception of like money, like what is a lot of money in the early days. You're probably younger. You're probably coming out of school.
Like you're living off.
You're having like hot dogs for dinner. Like
it's having mac and cheese every night. So yeah.
For side story, I remember at a rival university to Queen's University at Western, apparently some guys got scurvy because they had mac and cheese so often that they didn't get any like vitamins or nutrients in their food.
No.
They got like, now that sounds like total BS, but because we're filming, it's real. It's on the internet. Anyway, I digress. But I think it's interesting though that like he just didn't really know like what he should actually be asking for, or better yet, he didn't really know like the costs involved in doing something like that.
Like how his father knew that he had messed up immediately.
I like that
when he said, they made a decision in like 2 hours.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. And actually, that's a really good point. If they don't come back, this is a good negotiations thing. If they don't come back and bump you on the price, it's because you weren't expensive enough.
Right.
And that kind of is a bad feeling.
Yeah.
If you're in a really competitive situation.
It's like a good feeling, though, because you got your first client. But it's also a bad feeling because, we left money on the table. I can't
remember. This is a movie. I want to say it's called like War Dogs or something like that. And I can't remember the actor's name just a second. But remember they went in, they were like pitching the Pentagon on like selling them like weapons or something like that. And they were like, they were sitting down, and the Pentagon officials were like, well, we frankly just couldn't turn down your bid. And their bid was for like something crazy, like $60 million or something like that.
Okay.
And they were, and the main guy goes, what was the next highest bid? And the guy's like, about $150 million. And you just see them like, like that's the moment when their heart just breaks. I
feel like purchasing departments love telling you.
Yeah. But I think it was that was fascinating. I also think it was fascinating they didn't ask his dad before.
Yeah.
Yes, he tells his dad.
Well,
after.
His dad wouldn't have known necessarily if it was a good price. He was just able to identify that the decision happened so quickly that it was probably a low ball price.
I suppose that's right. Yeah. But anyway, sometimes you got to do what you got to do in the early days. It's hard to command a really big price when you have absolutely no market credibility. At the same time, you still don't want to leave some on the table. And I feel like that could be its own episode in and of itself, like how to navigate that.
Right. So fast forward in that story, he talked about like he finished the project and the client was happy and all that sort of stuff. And then he actually got like referred to 3 other clients to do like similar work and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I should have interjected at that point and said, did the initial client tell the subsequent clients what they paid?
Oh, that would be good. I know they were a referral. They were definitely a referral, but the price, I don't know. Yeah.
So this was an issue with us as well, is that we had then set the price for our first client and we got referrals, and the other clients knew what the first client had paid. So then we were locked into that lower price.
Like yes and no. You're locked. So
not locked in, but we were loosely tied.
You're in a price range.
Yeah.
You're definitely in a category. Like if you go in and you charge, I'm just making this up, but you charge your first customer like 10 grand, you can't charge the next one 100.
Right.
But you could maybe charge the next one 15 or 12.
Right.
Or, I guess you could go down. I wouldn't, but if you had to, you could.
So there's probably like a 20 to 30% like range.
Yeah, like there's a range. No one wants to
Yeah.
be had, but I think people also understand that it costs money to do this stuff, and you understand the business better. And so this was a big challenge, though. This would happen all the time. I would get on a sales call, and especially when it was because we were in higher ed again, as a lot of our customers, for anybody who's just joining the show now. And we would go to sell to them, and then they would say, "Oh, Gary at whatever university, at Gary University up the street, got it for this much. Why are you charging us this much?" And I'd be like, "Well, first off, you're a bigger school, or you're asking for more complex things, and Gary was there first." And you can respond to the objection.
Yeah. Okay.
And and we also knew we were competitive. I think that's the thing too, is by that point in our business, this is way later in the business.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, like in the early days, that was very scary.
Right.
Because you didn't know what the competitors were charging.
Yeah.
You didn't actually have a great sense of it. But he would have known that they undercharged. So I bet he didn't make that mistake the second time.
Right.
And but I'm sure it was still reasonably close to what he charged the first time. So
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know. One of those things for folks listening today to think about as well.
Yeah.
You're locked in a little bit, but you're not married to it. I think you can kind of have some flexibility there.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't do it though.
I was terrible with this stuff. This is why you were a critical component.
You
of
just
our
want people to
business.
use it. Our
Yeah,
joke was
I
always
know.
like, you'd pay them to
Yeah.
use the software. I'll pay you.
Bad advice. Don't ever do that.
Don't ever do that. So this cool accidental entrepreneur backs into this business, works out really well for him. Love that they had this thought of like, oh God, we have to get staff. I have to get people to help me. That was the second lesson, like get help. Oh God, I need an office. I needed like this massive like thing of documents, like 40 boxes delivered to his house. That would have been super annoying.
Yeah.
Especially in the time period as well. Like there wasn't, we talked about your document management solution back then, but he probably wasn't using that.
No, I think he was doing it on
manually going through, like that would have been horrifying, like an actual spreadsheet potentially, but it's probably Excel, but you know what I mean? That would have been a lot.
Yeah.
And then kind of getting to this point of like, okay, we're done this project. What are we doing with this? And they realize, oh, we need more customers, and they get them. So I thought I was just kind of a fascinating guy. Like he wasn't really like demand focused.
Yeah.
He was very much just like, I'm solving a problem.
Yeah. His business seemed to be just coming to him as well, which was great.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that, right? If you just solve a problem really well, like a lot of the other things kind of come together.
Word spreads, and absolutely. So that's really impressive.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And then he gets approached to sell this company.
Yeah.
And he thought he was just having lunch with some like these people who ended up buying it. But it just ended up being this conversation where he's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was pretty interesting too, because I think that was very similar-ish to our story, because he started to get advice that, oh, you should shop your company then. You should start putting it out there.
Right.
And he was kind of locked in on this principle of like locking in the win.
Yeah.
As we said, lock in a lot this episode already. But what did you think about that?
I like the analogy that we said in the episode, like one in your hand is worth a bird in your hand is worth two in the bush
nice,
or whatever.
Nice.
And I like that he was kind of in that same, he wasn't like, I'm not going to optimize for every last penny of value out of this, because I think too about afterwards, after you get acquired, you do have some sort of earnout. And if you really squeeze them hard, they're going to be tough on you on that earnout.
Yeah,
like,
we know that. We remember our the first deal that was offered to us.
Yeah.
Remember, we actually pushed back on the amount a little bit.
Yeah.
And they came back, and man, did they tighten the rest of that.
They tightened the rest of it down.
And they barely moved.
Right.
It was every inch cost a lot more of our time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's good advice, is that, hey, like you want to get yours, but, squeezing out every last penny may have consequences beyond the acquisition date and for your earnout and those types of things. So, yeah.
I think you got to think about too, like the path for your business. I mentioned this in the episode. It's really difficult to anticipate what your business is worth in the future. I mean, you still think about it a little bit, like you can't not in that situation, but he must have understood that either he didn't want to keep doing that, or that the growth like trajectory of the business was like to get to another level would have been really, really difficult.
Yeah. Maybe at that point in your business where you're like, okay, I have to make a major investment to get to the next level, to really scale this beyond my current position. And this acquirer is going to be able to do that at a much more, they have some sort of economies of scale that you don't have, that they'll be able to scale it more easily than you'll be able to.
And like actually we write it in our book, Startup Different, the Myth-Busting Blueprint for Your Multi-Million-Dollar Business. There is one part of it where we actually talk about how when you're thinking about that value of your business, I'm glad I got that to sit down again. When you're thinking about the value of your business, it's you can look in all directions, but ultimately you've just got to be happy with what's happening in the moment, and that feels like a good deal, feels like the right thing, because and that you'll be able to live with that decision later.
Right.
I think those you'll have other principles too, but those, at least for us, it sounded like a really familiar line of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think at that point then we started kind of like talking about those, I don't know, cataclysmic events that could potentially happen. And
he had a good one.
Yeah, he had a really good one.
Yeah.
So for us, we had the pandemic was one of those moments where we're like, whoa, scary. Like these earth, like world changing things do happen every once in a while.
Yep.
And
every 10 years, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, sure.
10 to 15. I don't know how accurate this data is going to be.
10 to 12 years. I feel like something major happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for him, obviously, it was the financial crisis, and was it Lehman Brothers that collapsed? That he was,
I think so.
That morning when he had the meeting. So, and obviously he was in.
Well, hang on. Let's do that story justice.
Okay.
So his business at that point was basically these middle market loans. So middle market being like companies in the probably like 2 to 10 million range. It's a pretty big range, but like somewhere in there, looking for working capital, so money to just like keep everything going, or maybe to pay for if they're like a physical product, they need capital,
get inventory,
whatever. Like they got hardware, they need to pay for that kind of stuff. And pretty cool business actually. I thought that was a really good idea too. Also, I love it's so niche. Like every time he's got like a really niche play.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And he's been successful
solving problems.
Yeah. And so then he goes in because he's securing this quite a bit of money to do a series of loans. He was talking about how there multiple were going to be on the books. He actually mentioned after the call that some of them were closing the next day.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he goes in, and that morning is the total, effectively the cataclysmic event of the financial collapse in 2008, the subprime mortgage crisis. And because his suppliers, because his product was capital,
where he
money,
was getting his money,
is where he was getting his money with these banks. These banks were going under and said, well, "You're screwed.
Yeah.
We're not going to help you anymore. You're toast." And I actually asked him after the call if he barfed when he heard that information. He said he didn't. I don't know if I believe him, but
I would have barfed.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's at least when you're in a roller coaster and your stomach just kind of drops. There's no roller coaster.
I'd have been on the train ride home. Train bathrooms are always kind of sway. I would have been trying to aim for the toilet as I'm
You got to move with the train. Move with the train. That's disgusting. Anyway. But anyway, so he has this crazy, horrifying moment, and that really made his company super insolvent after that.
Yeah.
Now, he did actually also mention after the call that he was able to convince one banker to basically keep with them, and actually was just enough capital to keep them
going,
just
keep
them
through
afloat
the worst part,
through the absolute worst part of the crisis, which as I mentioned, I actually said on the call, in the interview, if you did close any of those, that would have been the sale of the century.
Right.
And he did actually close one, so kudos to Rob for that. But I think it was remarkable because it made me think, of his first company and how it was a good thing he locked in that original wealth, because you don't know when something like that is going to happen and just totally torpedo your business. So I thought that was really cool learning. I don't know what it is to say. It's don't gamble with your startup.
Right.
If you can lock in that money, do it, man.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. This also contradicts a little bit of our conversation with Matt Reeser.
Yeah.
When we were talking about how Canadians don't hold on long enough with their businesses and get them purchased by American companies. But at the same time, it's if again, this is what I meant to say in that episode. It's but if you have this opportunity and you can lock in that wealth, you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're wrong.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of conflict in some of these episodes that we've had, because I'm of two minds on that, where I do feel like the conversation with Matt Reeser, there is something to be said about Canadian companies should aspire to be taking over the world, right? Whereas a lot of us just aspire to sell our business to, the big US competitor we did. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're right. You got one in the hand.
Yeah.
So
seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's complicated and I get it, but it was just kind of definitely a great story that showed that. One thing that I wanted to also get to, and this was kind of back to some of the funding And this because his business was so focused on funding other businesses and for their working capital. I wanted to address this, but he had this line. I'm just going to read it directly here. He said, if you want funding, basically you talk to them before you need it.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
You want to have lines of communication open with potential investors before you need that funding. That's very interesting because I wouldn't have done that. I would have been like,
you need money, you go to the bank. Or you go and you start emailing.
Oh,
right?
now I need money. I better go talk to some investors. Like I would not have had the foresight to do that. And I think that's a very important tidbit of information for anybody starting a business is like, if you think at some point you're going to want to scale and you're going to want to raise money, you should have a network of potential investors that you're communicating with, and you're keeping them up to date on how you're doing, how your business is going, and maybe it's a monthly email or something like that. But that's incredibly valuable insight that you have to nurture those relationships. What was the other saying? If you want
advice, ask for money, and if you want money, ask for advice.
I love that.
And it's kind of like they're very related because you could go to the venture capitalist, you could go to the bank, you could go to the potential investor and say, hey, I had questions about my business. Can you help me out or whatever? Yeah. And they'll get into it, and then they'll probably be like, hey, do you want any money for that business?
Yeah.
Ultimately, in both of those sayings, what you are doing is building rapport. Yeah. And like leaning back on like putting my sales hat. I want an actual hat that says sales. So I can switch to. But put my sales hat on here for a second. Like there's really almost no scenario where building rapport with someone is going to not work out for you.
Yeah, and I actually think about us, like when we were trying to buy our own office, we went to the bank and it was really tough to get money from the banks. We actually found a bank that did help us with that.
The Business Development Bank of Canada.
Yeah, BDC. Good people, yeah. But then like, if I fast forward like a year, 2 years after that, they were calling me up all the time offering us money. And I was like, no.
Hey, Chris, would you like some money?
We're good. Maybe, We're like honestly, we are so into the like fat end of the profit margin where we could pay for everything ourselves. And we were paying stuff down. Like it was like, and we were right on that upswing just before we got acquired. So like, you're sitting there and you're like, where were you guys? Like, it was so hard to get you to even like a real estate backed investment. Yeah. Where like worst case scenario,
like big
our
collateral
business goes up. The collateral was there to eat it up because we actually had a pretty sizable down payment as well. So they could have just taken the property from us if we'd gone under or something like that. Yeah. So it just blows my mind, but it's so true. You got to nurture those relationships with potential investors and probably potential banks as well. You want to, even if you're not, you probably want to have a relationship with your commercial banker. And even if you're not borrowing stuff, you want them asking you, hey, do you want a line of credit? Yeah. No, not right now. I'm good right now. Or maybe you get it and you have it just because you'll need it at some point. I don't know. It's a tough call.
I think you want to have the relationship. And another thing that, again, we just mentioned his story in 2008, but the reason also he was able to secure that loan from that bank right as that collapse was happening, which the bank shall remain nameless, was that he had such a strong relationship with the banker there. And the banker was like, look, I don't think this can happen, but I'm going to try to make this happen for you because they had that strong relationship. Yeah. Again, he didn't say that in the episode. We talked to him afterwards, but I think that was pretty, it's very telling. Yeah. But again, like there's so many parts of your business where like why like you having more of a rapport with the employees, with the customers, with the suppliers, with the whatever, it's going to benefit you. Yeah. With the landlord. Like there's no actually it's one thing that you taught me when I first moved into my first condo. Yeah. You were like, make sure you're incredibly nice to the super.
Yeah.
And you were right.
And like the security team, the concierge.
Because like for one thing, it's just good to be nice. We're Canadian.
One day they will bail you.
They'll bail you out. Something stupid will happen.
Something stupid will happen and you will.
They are the overlords of that space.
You were the guy that said hi to them every morning. It was nice. And, gave them a gift certificate for the coffee shop next door at Christmas time.
You do that?
And stuff like that. I do that.
Holy shit.
I know.
Excuse me. Wow. I almost swore on our program. I'm so
We'll
shocked.
bleep that out.
Yeah. Can we bleep that like really hard? Like, anyway. Okay. Two last things I want to cover. He had a bunch of myths, but there's two big ones. So the first was the growth at all costs sort of mentality. And we've talked about like growing for growth's sake or get big fast and all these things that are just sort of bad, but that can really hurt your business anyway. But the one thing I thought was really cool about this is he mentioned the scale machine. Yeah. Okay. And whatever you put in on the one end of the scale machine, it comes out on the other end bigger.
Right.
And then because he said that's really what scale is. I thought this was a cool definition of scale, but it makes sense. Scale is like your systems and your processes, your ways of doing things at a small level. They have to grow with the rest of the company.
Yep.
And if they suck going in, they're going to suck on the other side. And it's going to potentially make you entirely unsuccessful, or at the very least will hurt.
Yeah.
You'll hurt you either in your ability to deliver, the quality you deliver, your speed with which you can close deals. Like, it hurts across the board.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool take. Yeah, this is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Because you're like insane about efficiency.
I'm big about this. Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that if you want to scale your business, it's tough to go and hire, and then you got to train those people, and like there's a lag and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You can kind of anticipate some of
The
that.
lag is the worst when you hire people. It's tough.
Because you're like, you're
you
not
can
getting
see the money go.
Yeah, you're not actually getting the work done because you're training the people to do the thing, and then you're way slower, and it takes them a long time, and then it's really hard to get people who are going to be as efficient as you were.
Yeah.
So you don't even, add another unit of labor, and you get diminishing returns out of the output. So yeah.
I think too, like the sign of really good and efficient processes is profit.
Yep.
Right? The fact you're doing it right if you're turning a profit, period, and then bigger and bigger profits. Ideally, as you get larger, your cost per project implementation, cost of goods sold, whatever your thing is,
Yep.
The cost of that decreases on a marginal basis, and you are just increasingly profitable. That's how you know you've done it right.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought it was cool too how he was saying, some venture capitalists now are actually like looking for profit. I was like, wow, that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
Because before it's all this hype.
Yeah.
So it's actually I was like, that's really encouraging. Finally, we're having an impact. on the investing community in particular. And then the last thing, and this one kind of hit hard. It hurt a little bit, but he said the myth is that it's fun to start a business. So it's not fun. And his,
it's not always fun.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it.
But I definitely had fun at times.
Yeah.
I know I've always thought, like, if I'm enjoying what I'm doing like 51% of the time, then I'm pretty happy. Because a lot of
that's
stuff.
our dad.
Yeah. Actually, I think our father
dad.
actually came up with that one.
But,
but yeah, like that's the approach. That's like the benchmark I've always tried to look for, because it is tough. You have to do a ton of work, and he's right. But I would say that, as an entrepreneur, you can kind of set that culture, and you can bake in the fun into your company. And I think we did a good job of that. I think we had some really good employees who also kind of wanted to go to work at a place where they were going to have some fun. There were going to be some events. There were going to be some, dorky fake prizes for things that would happen, and that sort of stuff. So I think you, as an entrepreneur, if you're not having fun,
just like pizza parties.
Yeah. But I think as an entrepreneur, if you're not having fun at work, you need to look at your culture and figure out how to inject some fun into what you're
change
doing.
it to start having fun. Like why does it suck?
Yeah.
I think your employees could tell you, though, to be honest, pretty quickly why it sucks.
Yeah.
It would be tough to hear, but I think that you want to move it into a direction that is more employee-centric.
I think that actually goes to the scaling piece, actually, because we would often say to our employees, like, what are we doing right now that we all just hate? And then we would say, okay, can we put some devs on this to come up with a system to manage this? Or, exactly. That's what devs typically.
Not employees named Devin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was confusing.
We did have one employee named Devin.
Yeah,
he was he would wrapped up in the dev group.
He would join the dev meeting.
Yeah, you join the dev meeting, because why wouldn't he?
But I think that goes to the scale piece, is that you can actually say, hey, like, what do we hate doing? What is not fun? And let's automate it. And actually, we did that during the pandemic with some of the tech that we built. We came up with ways to throw devs, not Devin, at a problem, and
figuratively
and
as
so
well.
that we didn't have to do it. It was an automated piece at that point. So absolutely
cool. I think I agree with you 100%. I think make the culture fun is a big part of it, but this is actually a tough line to navigate.
Yep.
Sometimes people take a little bit advantage of places that are too much fun. Like, there's got to be this and HR is so hard, but there's this fine line between we're having a good time and we're working as well to, okay, now we're having we're not getting enough done, or the opposite, we are too stern and we're working all the time, we're not happy. And being able to
find the sweet spot.
Find that sweet spot is a never-ending challenge, frankly, of cultures.
Absolutely.
So
cool.
Well, that's another fantastic episode, Christopher.
Yeah, enjoyed that.
That was cool. Rob was awesome. I'd love to have him back on the show. Oh, also, we didn't mention this, but the Iowa-Toronto thing, how about that bit? That's pretty funny. I'm glad he picked Toronto, thank God, in the end. But anyway, thank you, folks, for joining us. That's another episode of Startup Different. We will be back next week with another interview. And until then, we are looking forward to actually seeing you then. Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.